My boyfriend and I have been together for 11 years. He treats me like a literal princess, 360 out of 365 days of the year. He makes sure I'm safe, happy, and taken care of. He comes and talks to me about my day every single day. He makes up a pillow fort on the couch for me every evening. So I'm comfy. Like, there are so many things. But 2 to 3 times per year, like clockwork, he turns almost evil. It'll happen like the flick of a switch, where he goes from, "You're the love of my life," to "Don't come near me." I'll give some examples. 1. About 2 weeks ago, I thought of an idea for an activity we could do and told him about it. He got all excited and said what a great idea it was. Yesterday, he was all excited, texting me about how it's going to go. Then we get in the car to leave, and there's an immediate change. He's instantly in a bad mood. So I ask him if he's okay. He says he's tired, but then proceeds to give me endless sass and short answers and constant sighing. So I ask again. Next thing I know, he's going off on me, telling me that I'm wasting his weekend, forcing him to do something he doesn't want to do. I said that I was confused because, well, that same morning he was all ready to go. He said he only said yes to make me happy, which literally doesn't make sense because he says no to my random ideas all the time when he doesn't want to do it, and then we just make other plans. So I said, okay, no problem. Let's just go home and watch a movie. But nope, he drove all the way there to throw a fit and drive back. On the drive back, I had a major meltdown because I just found out some bad news about my mom's health. And I'm very overwhelmed. I don't have any other family, so losing her will be hard. I told him that I'm struggling and need his support. I know bad timing, but I couldn't hold myself together. He said nothing the rest of the drive home, and then immediately left to go hang out with some guy he knows I don't like. Now we haven't spoken really since yesterday, and I told him I was hurt, and his response was okay. 2. Last fall, we were invited to my cousin's wedding. We laughed and picked out our outfits, and we did the RSVP together. We laughed about the shitty food choices. Then randomly one day, right before the wedding, he decided to go to his dark place, as I call it, and shut down, telling me that I have no respect for him and must not know him at all if I thought he'd be attending my cousin's wedding. I said I was confused because he told me he wanted to go, and then he proceeded to tell me he doesn't know if he wants to be with me because I should know better. Literally zero logic, and I felt crazy. 3. For my birthday last year, he didn't acknowledge it. He hid my birthday from his family. My birthday is before Christmas, and we had his family Christmas party the same day as my birthday. And he hid the fact that it was my birthday. It was so odd. Every other year, he's gone to great lengths to make me happy, whether that's a date day, a surprise party, or whatever else. 4. Last year, we were supposed to go to my family cottage. It was going to be the first time he met my cousins. I never see them, so in 10 years, he still hadn't met them. Anyways, for 8 months, he talked to me about how we were going, what we were bringing, and we looked up things to do in the area, and we rented a car and all this stuff. Next thing I know, 2 weeks before the cottage, he tells me he's not going and that I should have known that, even though he said he wanted to go, I should have known that that meant he didn't. So I said, fine, don't go. Then, the day before the cottage, he tells me he's coming because several months ago I told him I wanted him to come. So now he felt forced. I told him not to come because he made it clear he didn't want to. So he came. We were supposed to go for 2 weeks, but he didn't want to stay that long. So I lied and told him we could only stay for 2 to 3 days. Once we got there, he hardly talked to me and made me feel like shoot. He told me I was horrible for making him come. The next day, I'm shocked because we're at a dinner with my family, and he was having a good time with them. And I overhear him tell them that we'll stay a few more days, without even asking me, and after telling me that I forced him to be there. The whole reason he was supposed to come in the first place is that my family is toxic, and I needed my support system. Then, when we finally left days later, we were pumping gas, and he said, "Oh man, I wish we could have stayed longer," as if he wasn't the reason we were leaving so early, and made me feel like shoot for making him come. Anyways, you get the point. But I'm so confused because, like I said, 99% of the time he's a literal angel, and I couldn't ever dream of him acting this way. And then boom, out of nowhere, he turns to the dark side and has zero empathy and is horrible. But then snaps back to his normal self after a day or two. It just doesn't make sense. I have a bipolar sister, and there are some similarities, but it's not the same. Does anyone else act like him? Do you know what's wrong with him or how to approach it? Please be kind. I'm having a horrible time between my mom and him right now. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. It really doesn't matter why he does it. It matters why he won't fix it. The frequency of his dark periods are going to increase because he will get more and more comfortable doing this. I get that this is a hard time with your mom, but you need to work on a support system you can actually count on and won't turn on you randomly. I think you need some firm boundaries on behavior here. Talk to him and let him know this is confusing and hurtful, and if he won't get help for it, you will have to end the relationship. Don't say that if you won't follow through. I would rather face life's challenges on my own than waiting for someone to randomly abuse me when they see fit and to relieve their stress. Comment 2. Bipolar or not, this is not how he should act. A member of my family is bipolar, but when they act up, I freaking tell them straight. Tell them it needs to change because it's making you feel shoot. This is a form of manipulation. They are nice to you 99% of the time, but that other 1%, they are a nasty prick. But you forget about the time they're a prick because it's okay. Because 99% of the time, they're nice. No. He loves gaslighting you, and you just take it, stand up for yourself, and tell him how it makes you feel. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support and advice from my last post. So, after that last incident, things got even more complicated. The day after he left to hang out with that guy I don't like, he came back home acting like nothing had happened. He was all smiles and even brought me my favorite takeout. I was still hurt and confused, so I didn't really engage much. He noticed and asked if I was still upset. I told him I was, and he just sighed and said, "I thought you'd be over it by now." That really stung, but I didn't want to start another argument, so I just nodded and went to bed early. The next morning, he woke up and made breakfast like he usually does. He was being extra sweet, trying to make up for the previous days, I guess. But I was still feeling off. I decided to take a walk to clear my head. While I was out, I got a call from my mom's doctor. The news wasn't good. Her condition had worsened. I felt like my world was crumbling, and I needed to talk to someone. I called my boyfriend, but he didn't pick up. I texted him, and he replied hours later saying he was busy with work stuff. When I got home, he was there, playing video games. I told him about my mom, and he just said, "I'm sorry to hear that," and without even looking away from the screen. I felt so alone and unsupported. I went to our room and cried. Later that night, he came in and tried to cuddle, but I pushed him away. I told him I needed more from him, especially now. He got defensive and said he was doing his best. We ended up having a huge argument, and he stormed out, saying he needed space. The next day, he was back to his usual self, acting like nothing had happened. He apologized for the fight and said he wanted to make it up to me. He suggested we go on a weekend trip to get away from everything. I was hesitant, but agreed, hoping it might help us reconnect. We planned to leave that Friday. Friday came, and we were all packed and ready to go. But just as we were about to leave, he got a call from his boss. There was an emergency at work, and he had to go in. I was disappointed, but understood. He promised we'd go the next weekend instead. I spent the weekend alone, trying to keep myself busy and not think about everything that was going wrong. The following week, he was extra attentive, probably trying to make up for the canceled trip. He even took me out for a nice dinner midweek, which was a pleasant surprise. But then, on Thursday night, he got into one of his moods again. He came home late, smelling like alcohol, and was really irritable. I asked him where he'd been, and he snapped at me, saying he didn't need to report his every move to me. I was taken aback and didn't push further. Friday morning, he apologized again, saying he was stressed about work and didn't mean to take it out on me. I was getting tired of the constant ups and downs, but I still loved him and wanted to make things work. We decided to go on our trip that weekend as planned. The trip started off well. We drove to a cozy cabin in the mountains, and the scenery was beautiful. For the first day, everything was perfect. We hiked, cooked together, and even had a bonfire. But on the second day, he got a call from his mom. I could tell from his tone that something was wrong. After the call, he was distant and moody again. I asked him what was wrong, and he said his mom was having some health issues. I tried to comfort him, but he pushed me away, saying he needed to be alone. I decided to give him space and went for a walk. When I came back, he was packing his bags. He said he needed to go see his mom and that I should stay and enjoy the rest of the trip. I was hurt and confused, but didn't want to argue. He left, and I spent the rest of the weekend alone in the cabin, feeling more isolated than ever. When I got back home, he was there, acting like everything was fine. He said his mom was doing better and that he was sorry for leaving me alone. I told him we needed to talk about his behavior and how it was affecting me. He agreed, and we had a long, emotional conversation. He admitted he didn't know why he acted the way he did sometimes, and that he was scared he was pushing me away. I told him I needed consistency and support, especially with everything going on with my mom. We decided to try couples therapy to see if it could help us understand and fix the issues. Our first session was eye-opening. The therapist suggested he might have some unresolved trauma or mental health issues that were causing his mood swings. He was hesitant, but agreed to see a therapist on his own as well. Over the next few weeks, things started to improve. He was more aware of his moods and tried to communicate better. I also learned to give him space when he needed it without taking it personally. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One night, we were sitting on the couch, and he opened up about his childhood. He told me about his dad, who was emotionally hurtful and would have similar mood swings. He said he was terrified of becoming like him and didn't know how to break the cycle. It was a breakthrough moment for us. I realized his behavior wasn't about me. It was about his own fears and insecurities. We still have a long way to go, but we're committed to working on it together. I feel more hopeful now, knowing that we're both willing to put in the effort to make our relationship work. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to let my husband back in after he ditched me? And our baby for Vegas. My husband and I have been married for almost 2 years. We have a 15-month-old, and we plan to have this second baby. Our relationship has always been up and down, but recently when we were doing well, we talked about having a second child close in age to our first, and now I'm 10 weeks pregnant. About 2 weeks ago, we got into a major argument, which turned into him sleeping in a hotel every night and not coming home to see our son or talk to me. His mom thinks I should get him baby unaliving, which I think has been part of his whole shift in not wanting this baby anymore, because he was really excited about it prior to her saying that. He's been so mean and avoidant, and I just don't know how to get through to him. I've already had 2 baby unalivings prior to our marriage with him. And on top of all this, he wants a divorce, or he wants me to sign a post-nuptial agreement. I found out he's in Vegas right now with his buddy, and he told me he isn't wearing his wedding ring. He's been following random girls on Instagram. It's just too much. From the beginning, I've been very excited to have this baby and really didn't even consider in baby unaliving until now that infidelity is in question. And just coming to realize how horrible he's been. I've been praying for him and our marriage every day, and it just seems like it gets worse and worse. I'm starting to question my faith, honestly. I just don't know what to do. We've had one face-to-face conversation this entire time where we could talk about our feelings. But other than that, he continues to stonewall me, gaslight me into thinking our friends and family don't like me, gaslight me into thinking all of this is my fault, and is coercing me into a baby unaliving and a divorce that I don't want. Please help. Now for an update, July 8th, 24. My pregnancy, I went last Friday to have another ultrasound and the baby keeps measuring smaller. My due date keeps getting pushed back. So I'm trying to get a hold of my obstetrician to make a more well-rounded decision. See what she thinks about the slow development. I would like to keep the baby still, but last night my husband texted me a frightening text that, "Be freaking careful because your next husband might unalive you with the games you play." I just cannot even wrap my mind around that statement. My marriage, he came to Palm Springs last weekend, where I'm staying with my mom for the time being. He spent a few hours with our son, and we were able to talk. It seems like he is just very embarrassed that all our friends and family know he's been gone in hotels for weeks on end, and he is definitely taking advantage of me trying to be nice and offer an olive branch. He sent me videos of him filling out divorce papers, saying he was going for full custody. But I haven't been served, so who knows if he will actually go through with it. Post-nuptial agreement, He keeps saying the reason why he wants me to sign a post-nuptial agreement is because we have a commercial real estate brokerage that he founded in 2022, and I've been doing all the marketing for until I stepped away and became a stay-at-home mom. I still do social here and there. Helped him get marketing materials ordered and designed for a convention we had last spring. And we recently did a rebrand last winter that I took charge of. I've supported him from the beginning, and although I'm not the founding broker, I do feel like I've been on this journey with him as a business partner and wife. This business is our livelihood. Our friends and family work for us. We have about 20 employees and sold $250 million in total sales volume the first year. And it's essentially doubled or more every year. He says he doesn't want me to get half of the company because the company is his. And he says even if we divorce now, he would still take 100% of the company because California is a community property state. And we would have to be married for 5 years at least for me to get half of the business in the divorce. So I'm not sure, honestly. It seems like there's something he isn't telling me because he only brings this post-nuptial agreement up when we are arguing and he's threatening to divorce me. Thank you for all the advice, everyone. I know it's hard with limited information and only my point of view. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. From what you've described, your marriage is over. Do not sign anything without speaking to your own lawyer first. The only things you can do now are 1. Get a lawyer and follow their advice. 2. Find somewhere safe where you and your kid can stay. Move out only if your lawyer advises it. 3. Reach out to your friends and family and build a support system. 4. Cut off all communication with his family and have his communication go through your lawyer. 5. Decide if you can raise 2 kids without his help or just 1. Edit it to add to point number 2. Comment 2. Your husband is in butt. Get to an attorney now. Now. Your marriage isn't great. He's basically abandoned you and tried to manipulate you into a baby unaliving. Try praying for the money to get a great attorney. How much more crap should you put up with? He doesn't help with the baby because of work, but can run off to Vegas to cheat on his pregnant wife. Now for the update. Thank you for all the comments and support from my last post. After the frightening text from my husband, I decided to take some serious steps to protect myself and my son. I contacted a lawyer to discuss my options and to understand what I could do legally to ensure our safety. The lawyer advised me to document everything and to consider filing a restraining order if the threats continued. This was a hard pill to swallow, but I knew I had to be strong for my son and the baby on the way. In the meantime, my obstetrician finally got back to me about the baby's slow development. She suggested additional tests to rule out any serious issues and to monitor the pregnancy closely. This added another layer of stress, but I was determined to stay positive and focus on the health of my baby. My husband's behavior continued to be erratic. He would send me loving messages one day, and then follow up with threats and accusations the next. It was like living with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. One evening, he showed up unannounced at my mom's house in Palm Springs. He was visibly upset and demanded to see our son. My mom, who has been my rock through all of this, stood her ground and told him he needed to calm down before he could come inside. This led to a heated argument on the front porch, and I had to step in to de-escalate the situation. Eventually, he left, but not before making more threats about taking full custody. The next day, I received a call from one of our mutual friends who works at the brokerage. She told me that my husband had been acting out at work, making impulsive decisions, and alienating some of our key employees. This was alarming because the business is our main source of income, and any instability could have serious repercussions. I decided to reach out to a few other employees to get a better understanding of what was happening. They confirmed that my husband's behavior had been erratic and that morale was low. This made me realize that his personal issues were spilling over into our professional life, and it was affecting more than just our family. I knew I had to take action to protect the business as well. I called for a meeting with our core team and explained the situation as best as I could without airing too much dirty laundry. I reassured them that I was still committed to the company and that I would do everything in my power to keep things running smoothly. This was a tough conversation, but it was necessary to maintain trust and stability within the team. Around this time, I also started seeing a therapist to help me navigate the emotional turmoil. The therapist helped me understand that my husband's behavior was not my fault, and that I needed to set boundaries to protect myself and my children. This was a turning point for me. I realized that I had been trying to fix everything on my own, but I needed to lean on my support system and take care of my mental health. One evening, while I was putting our son to bed, my husband called. He sounded different, calmer, almost remorseful. He apologized for his behavior and admitted that he was struggling with a lot of internal issues. He confessed that his mother's disapproval of the pregnancy had triggered a lot of unresolved feelings from his past. He grew up in a very controlling household, and his mother's opinion still held a lot of weight in his life. This revelation gave me some insight into his erratic behavior, but it didn't excuse it. We decided to meet for coffee the next day to have a more in-depth conversation. During this meeting, he opened up about his fears and insecurities. He admitted that he felt overwhelmed by the responsibilities of being a husband, father, and business owner. He also confessed that he had been seeing a therapist and was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. This was a huge step for him, and it made me see that he was at least trying to address his issues. We talked about the post-nuptial agreement again, and he explained that it was more about his fear of losing control than about the money. He was afraid that if we divorced, he would lose everything he had worked so hard to build. This conversation was eye-opening for both of us. It made me realize that his actions were driven by fear and insecurity, not malice. We agreed to attend couples therapy to work on our issues together. This was not an easy decision, but we both knew that we needed professional help to navigate this complicated situation. The first few sessions were tough, but they helped us communicate better and understand each other's perspectives. As for the business, I took on a more active role again, at least temporarily, to stabilize things. This was challenging, especially with the pregnancy, but it was necessary. Our employees appreciated the effort, and it helped restore some confidence in the company's future. In the midst of all this, I received the results from the additional tests for the baby. Thankfully, everything came back normal, and the doctor assured me that some babies just develop at their own pace. This was a huge relief and gave me the strength to keep pushing forward. We still have a long way to go, but I feel more hopeful now. My husband is making an effort to address his issues, and we are both committed to working on our marriage. It's not going to be easy, but I believe that we can get through this together. Thank you for reading and for all the support. Am I the idiot for telling my husband about his drunk dad's creepy confession? I, 30 years old female, have been with my husband, 30 years old male, for 10 years and married for 3. From the start of our relationship, I've gotten along very well with his parents, 64 years old female and 67 years old male. My own parents were certainly not the nicest of people, and I don't have a relationship with what little family I have left. So to be blessed with such a supportive and kind couple of people has always meant a lot to me. Our homes are a short drive from each other, and we regularly meet up and host one another. Yesterday, my husband's parents came over to our home for dinner. This is something we've done 100 times before, and for the most part, nothing was any different. Not long after they arrived, however, I began noticing my father-in-law was drinking heavier than he usually did. We always meet up for dinners on the weekend, so it's never unusual to cut loose and drink a little. But my father-in-law was noticeably going through beers quicker than any of us. My husband even made a joke about it, to which his dad just smiled and said he'd had a busy day. I honestly didn't think anything of it, and it wasn't brought up again. The rest of the evening passed well, and after we'd eaten and plates were cleared away, my husband and mother-in-law started chatting in the kitchen. I went back into the living room to see my father-in-law sitting in a chair and staring into space. I was conscious he'd had a lot to drink, so asked casually if he was feeling okay. He looked at me with a serious expression and in a low voice said, "I need to talk to you in private." His tone made me nervous, and I went to sit opposite him. It was then that my father-in-law told me that he was in love with me, and always had been. He told me he thought I was beautiful and wished we could be together in another life. Finally, he begged me not to tell his wife or son, but said he needed me to know the truth. You can probably imagine, but I was absolutely stunned. If he hadn't looked or sounded the way he did, I'd probably have figured he was joking. But he just looked at me, and at that point my husband came back into the room. I know I probably should have spoken up, but I barely said a word the rest of the night. I was just shell-shocked and didn't even know where to begin. After perhaps an hour more, my parents-in-law said their goodbyes. I'd been shocked and confused more than anything after he'd told me. But as they left, my father-in-law stared at me in a way he never had before. And for the first time, I truly felt uncomfortable in his presence. It's the next day now, and I have no idea what to do. I don't know if my father-in-law was just so drunk and perhaps upset by something else that he said something he didn't mean, or if he was completely serious. I don't know what to do here. Do I tell people? Say nothing and hope it never gets brought up again? Either way, I don't know how I'm going to be able to navigate future meetings with them. I'm at a total loss, and if anyone has any advice, I'd be really grateful. Thanks all. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Is he possibly a candidate for any aging conditions? Stroke also? I mean, maybe if you speak to a counselor, they can give you word tools for how to approach what needs to be discussed. He could just be disgusting, but that doesn't sound like your experience of him. It could be early onset Alzheimer's, which often highly sexualizes people early on, usually in very odd ways. It could be that he's suffered one or more small strokes. It's also possible a form of dementia that sets in sporadically in folks. You need professional help to figure out who and when to approach. I'd call a counselor as soon as possible. Comment 2. Tell your husband everything that happened immediately. Together with your husband, tell his mom. She needs to know. It sounds like your father-in-law needs a full medical and psychological evaluation. If he's found to be clear-minded about this, you need to have no contact with him. That's not even a question at this point. Please tell everybody. This is absolutely not the kind of thing you keep to yourself. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, after that shocking confession from my father-in-law, I spent the entire next day in a state of anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort and confusion. I decided to keep it to myself for the time being, hoping that maybe it was just a drunken slip-up. But things took a turn for the worse when my husband suggested we visit his parents for dinner again, just 2 days later. I couldn't come up with a good excuse to avoid it, so I reluctantly agreed. When we arrived at their house, everything seemed normal at first. My mother-in-law was her usual cheerful self, and my father-in-law greeted us with a smile, though I noticed he avoided making eye contact with me. As the evening progressed, I tried to act as naturally as possible, but I couldn't help but feel tense. My husband didn't seem to notice anything amiss, which was a small relief. After dinner, my husband and his mom went into the kitchen to clean up, leaving me alone with my father-in-law in the living room. My heart raced as I tried to think of a way to avoid another awkward conversation. But before I could come up with an excuse to leave, he spoke up. "I'm sorry about the other night," he said quietly, looking down at his hands. "I was drunk and said things I shouldn't have. Please, let's just forget it ever happened." I wanted to believe him, but there was something in his tone that made me doubt his sincerity. Still, I nodded and mumbled something about it being okay, hoping that would be the end of it. But then he added, "I meant what I said, though. I just shouldn't have told you." That was the moment I realized this wasn't going to go away on its own. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I excused myself and went to find my husband. I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I needed to talk to him about it, no matter how difficult it would be. Later that night, after we got home, I finally mustered the courage to tell my husband what had happened. I could see the shock and disbelief on his face as I recounted the conversation with his father. He was silent for a long time, processing what I'd just told him. Then he got angry. Not at me, but at his father. "I can't believe he would do this," he said, pacing the room. "I need to talk to him. This isn't okay." I tried to calm him down, but he was determined to confront his father. The next day, he called his parents and asked to meet his dad alone. I was a nervous wreck, waiting to hear how the conversation would go. When my husband returned, he looked more frustrated than ever. He admitted to it, my husband said, shaking his head. He said he was sorry, but he also said he couldn't help how he felt. I don't know what to do. We spent the next few days in a state of tension. My husband was torn between his love for his parents and his anger at his father's betrayal. I felt guilty for causing a rift in their family, even though I knew it wasn't my fault. We decided to take a break from seeing his parents for a while, hoping that some distance would help us figure out what to do next. But things didn't get any easier. My mother-in-law started calling, asking why we hadn't been over to visit. My husband made excuses, but I could tell she was getting suspicious. The stress was taking a toll on both of us, and we started arguing more frequently. I felt like our marriage was starting to crack under the pressure. One night, after another heated argument, my husband broke down and admitted that he didn't know if he could ever look at his father the same way again. He felt betrayed and hurt, and it was affecting his relationship with his mother, too. I felt helpless, not knowing how to fix any of it. In the midst of all this, I started reflecting on my own past and how my lack of a supportive family had made me so grateful for my in-laws. I realized that I had put them on a pedestal, and now that image was shattered. It made me question my own judgment and whether I could ever fully trust anyone again. As the days went by, the strain on our marriage only grew. My husband and I tried to support each other, but the weight of the situation was too much. We decided to seek counseling, hoping that a professional could help us navigate this mess. But even with therapy, the damage had been done. The final blow came when my mother-in-law found out the truth. My father-in-law, in a moment of guilt, confessed everything to her. She was devastated and furious, not just at him, but at me too. She felt betrayed by both of us, and it drove a wedge between us that I don't think will ever heal. So here we are, 3 days after that fateful dinner, and our lives have been turned upside down. My husband is struggling to come to terms with his father's actions. Our marriage is on shaky ground, and my relationship with my in-laws is in tatters. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that things will never be the same again. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.